And then for the renewal, when it comes, it's like we strategize. It's like, hey, what are we doing? And there's times that I just say, you know what, the best option is for you to stay with your existing lender. For me, it's really about the relationship. It's not about a transaction. And I have never focused my business on that. It's really helping people.
Welcome back to our show. I'm Jenny Woon, host of In the House podcast. I am joined by ALISA Aragon-LLOYD with Bridgestone Financing Pros, part of the Dominion Lending Center's Mountain View. Am I saying it correctly in that form?
Actually, sorry, I guess I should tell you. Yes. Because that actually changed. I moved to a different office last year. So it's actually Dominion Lending's home line mortgages.
Home line mortgages.
So I'm not with, I know, I'm changing it now.
Maybe you can explain that because before we got into your background about yourself and your business, with mortgage brokerage offices, I guess it's almost the same thing where with real estate, we have our own offices, like RE/MAX, for example. And then there's also... they're all individually owned and operated.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So kind of the same concept.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. So because when you're licensed, you do have to have your license somewhere.
Okay.
So mine is with Dominion Lending Home Line Mortgages.
Okay. Yes. And so my question, I wanted to, this is a surprise, but we may have cross-pollinated at some point at when you were working in the development pre-sale world.
That's right. Yes.
So 14, 15 years ago, would you say?
It was probably about 12 years ago that I got my mortgage license and I've been doing my own business.
Okay.
But yes, prior to that, I worked for developers for 14 years.
Okay. We may have met or maybe have worked at the same time with Polygon.
Probably, yeah.
So that's... But I was on the sales floor and I was like super green and super new. So I was like put out in the Fraser Valley where no visitors ever came to see us. So
I have to say, thanks to Polygon, I actually know the Lower Mainland because they had so many different communities throughout the Lower Mainland that especially, further out in the valley, because before I used to be Willoughby, and then you're like, oh my gosh, like, it's like you almost needed your passport to get there, right? And now it's like actually like Chilliwack, it's further out. So it's really interesting how the real estate has expanded through the years and how you used to say Langley. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so far. And now you think Langley's like no big deal.
Super close. Yeah.
Now it's Chilliwack, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure later it'll be like Kelowna. It's like, oh, it's just next door.
Yeah. But you have to cross a couple of streams and rivers now.
Yeah. So maybe not so much now, but so it's been interesting how even real estate and our careers have actually developed through the years and how we have grown with real estate.
Yeah, you've evolved.
Yes.
So tell us, I got your name from just reading the new home and condo guide. So I appreciate what you write in there because I've had written in the Burnaby Now for many, many years in the Q&A section as their expert, panelist. And so I read your article and it's so much appreciated that you're educating the readers out there and taking the time to educate people.
Thank you. And that's what it's about. It's really about educating people and pretty well for them to make an informed decision and be comfortable with the decisions they're making. Because when you're nervous or you don't know what you want to do or there's uncertainty, that's when they're like, they just freeze, right? And again, buying a home, whether it's their first home or their 20th home, it's supposed to be an enjoyable experience. There's always stresses, but I do the best I can to actually mitigate any risk, but also for them to feel comfortable through the process. So I really tell my clients, feel free to ask the same question, even if it's 20 times, it doesn't matter. They're excellent and they're great at what they do. And I'm good at what I do. But again, it's important that they're actually comfortable. Right?
No, just speaking with you right now, I'm already at ease. Every episode, I'm always nervous. But every episode I'm like, okay, can I make sure I have enough content to fill the air? But you're great. I want to be able to dive deep into more about what you do in your business. So maybe give us a little bit of a background of yourself and how you went into, deciding why you want to be a mortgage broker?
Sure. So we talked about before, I guess we met at Polygon. And that's kind of where I started my real estate career. I started at the very bottom. I was marketing. I think where I was like an office assistant marketing. That's pretty well right after BCIT. I started at Polygon and I kind of worked my way through it. And I really got to work with amazing people, learned so many things. Polygon was a great company to start my career with. And then from there, I actually just worked with different developers and property management companies through the last, through my 14 years in the corporate world, I will call it. So I used to work for Ledicam McAllister, The Quick Group, Pinnacle, Solterra, Maverick Real Estate. And then I worked for Hollywood Properties, which they own and manage their own properties. So it was very extensive real estate. So my whole career has been real estate, right? So the information that I provide my clients or the knowledge from my experience, it really helps because I had a client, for example, years ago. She's like, I'm looking at buying this property, but they're going to be doing a repipe. And I'm like, okay, so that sounds good. But, there's going to be, for example, they're going to be tearing up walls and they might be tearing up your bathroom and part of the kitchen and all this kind of stuff. And I said, you work from home and you're a writer. And I said, that's definitely going to impact a little bit your noise. They're going to be shutting off the water. And I knew all that because when I was at Hollyburn, that's what they do to their buildings, to upgrade them. So it was really interesting, again, the different concepts or not necessarily concepts, but the advice I give my clients is because I've seen it or I've been part of it, that it's very different advice. Because again, I've been in real estate for pretty well my whole career.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I would say you're giving a way more like deeper understanding of their buying process versus someone who's never done that, doesn't have that background. It's more just like number crunching and just like getting the numbers out to them and maybe not really having that emotional connection with them.
Yeah. It's really, again, it's a big decision. When you're talking with clients that are going to be buying their first home, or a home, an owner-occupied property, their principal residence, that's an emotional buy, right? When we're talking to investors, that's all numbers. So it's not really an emotional buy. It's really more numbers and the cash flow. And that's what like that cash is king on that sense, right? So I kind of obviously, focus on whatever the client's needs are. Okay, so I always tell them, we'll do whatever you want, but you might want to consider this, this, and this. And then from there, they can make an informed decision and say, okay, we're going to do this.
Right.
I'm like, perfect. So,
I like to ask this question usually before we start, and I totally skipped it, and I'm going to ask it now.
Okay.
What is your spirit animal?
My spirit home.
Totally not real estate related.
No, I know. I don't know. I guess, I don't know. Maybe you can help me find out. I know about energy and everything else.
Let's find an animal for you after the session because I'll get to know you a little bit more.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. So a lot of our listeners are students who want to get into real estate, whether it be property management, mortgage broker, appraiser, real estate agent. There's also real estate agents that are new to the business and maybe 20 years in the business that are listening. There's developers, there's people in the trades. So this question are for people who are considering going into being a mortgage broker. So as a real estate agent, we have to get licensed. Our license renewals like every 2 years. And we have to take courses alongside that in order to renew our license. So as a mortgage broker, walk us through like what kind of steps and education is required to get your license, number one. And then secondly, when you renew, like, is there a renewal process every
every 2 years?
Okay.
It's the same way as you guys.
Okay.
So if you want to get your mortgage license, you have to go through the Saunders School of Business at UBC. So it's pretty well the same place that you guys would get your real estate license. So you have to pass the exam. I know I did years and years ago. I think you have to at least get 70% as a score in order to be able to pass and get your license. And then after that, you do have to renew your license every 2 years. You do have to take courses. And in our case, I don't know if it's with realtors. I don't think it is. You have to actually get a criminal check done.
Every 2
every
years
2
as
years.
well.
Yes.
I think ours is just the first time.
Yeah. So for us, it's constant. I guess probably because we're not necessarily dealing with cash directly, but we are talking about finances and everything else. So it's part of the due diligence that they do. And then it's just getting more, we're all regulated, and now there are regulations that pretty well both realtors and brokers are getting regulated under the same umbrella, federal umbrella or provincial umbrella. So
how about under your brokerage? Like how much education, like how much are they, like at our brokerage, we're always attending webinars and the Oakland University and anything that comes out new, there's always seminars on that provided by our managing broker. So is it a managing broker that kind of
so we in our office I'm with Homeline Mortgages and they're great. They do have pretty well regular sessions, training sessions. One of the things they actually did, we just had a book club. So we actually got to read a book, whoever wanted to join, and we discussed the book every month. And that was really, really beneficial. But yes, so they have regular lenders that actually come and tell us about their niche. And part of the business, anybody should, at least for me, is I always look at how you have to stay current. One, what lenders are doing, because each of them have their niches, but also what kind of change policies or what are their different programs to be able to do it. So that's definitely something that our office does. And then through Dominion Lending, they do have their Dominion Lending universities, for example, and they also have their sales conferences. Obviously, COVID kind of put a bit of kibosh to everything, but they usually have that every couple of years. And the alternative year, they actually have the university where you get to attend, and they have different speakers and different things.
Yeah. And so, so let's just say someone graduates and they're now deciding which brokerage to work with. And also, should they go to a bank or should they work independently?
Well, that's a really good question you asked, because a lot of people don't know this. If you work for a bank, you don't have to have a mortgage license because they're actually bank employees.
Okay.
However, they only work exclusively for the bank. So they are not allowed. Sometimes they do, which they're not supposed to. And they're definitely BCFSA, which regulates brokers. Mortgage brokers are definitely coming down on people that are actually doing mortgages without having a license. But if you work for the bank, you're technically an employee. And you don't have to be licensed. You just have to follow the regulations of the bank. If you are a mortgage broker, then yes, you have to be licensed. And that's why you see mortgage specialists. So mortgage specialists which again work for the banks or credit unions, they cannot call themselves brokers. So you can only call yourself a broker or mortgage professional or mortgage expert if you actually have a license.
Okay.
So that's where the difference is.
That makes sense.
Yes.
And so you're probably the best person to ask this. Realtor, mortgage broker, lifestyle differences. Like, let's just say someone wants to get into real estate and they have these books in front of them, and the courses are kind of the same price, right? And
probably.
What are the differences in terms of kind of their schedule, paperwork, the amount of keeping up with the licensing requirements, lifestyle? I think that a lot of our topics are about like work-life balance here. And so and you have a son. Yes. How have you balanced that with your life? And then just going back to when you were in selling real estate, how that experience was versus now.
Well, when I worked for developers, I was more on the back end. Like I used to work on the marketing and sales side. So I got to the point that I was overseeing the marketing and sales at different companies. So I wasn't directly selling. I was working with, the sales managers and coordinators and the teams and the marketing department. But what, as a broker or whether you do real estate, yes, it's the lifestyle. Paperwork, I would probably say we deal with a lot more paperwork than you guys.
And paperwork chasing, probably.
Yeah, but again, that's setting up the proper expectations for the client, and just explain to them the process. Definitely since COVID, there's been a lot more, lenders have become more document heavy. So they're asking for a lot more documents. And also because of money laundering, as the same with you guys, is they're really making sure that, they're asking for statements and make sure they're proper statements, like bank statements or where the sources of the funds are coming from. So definitely, I would say brokers are definitely a lot more document heavy compared to realtors. One of the difference, for example, is because of COVID, I have been able to work a lot more from home. So clients are more open, and even lenders have shifted that you're able to actually, you don't have to, because I always met my clients in person. But with COVID, it's like a lot of people are not comfortable doing that. So now it's Zoom calls and doing DocuSign and stuff. So realtors did that for a lot longer time than we did. But you still have to show the homes. You have to do open houses. So you don't see as much as the clients as you guys do. But you're still an integral part of the process, right? Deadline wise, I mean, you're still kind of dealing with deadlines. Yes, we don't have the multiple offer situations, but we're still working with you guys, with realtors, like strategizing. Okay, if we're in multiple offer situations, what do we do? I contact every realtor that my clients work with, and I still maintain all their financial information confidential for the client. However, I like to talk to the realtor that are representing the clients. And the reason is because then we can strategize, or I can just get documentation directly from the realtor instead of getting the client to give me all that.
For the accepted offers and anything related to the property.
Exactly. Especially more when it's stratas, because you do obviously have to get more strata documents and everything else. So it actually simplifies the process a little bit easier.
Right.
Now, when it comes to, for example, compensation, we get paid based on the mortgage amount.
Okay.
So if a client puts 50% down payment, we get paid 50% of. For you guys, you get paid on the full purchase price.
Right.
So that's where the difference is. Yeah. However, we have refinances. You guys don't have refinances, right? So if somebody refinances mortgage, then I would get paid again. And the lender pays me based on the loan amount, not on the interest rate, right? So that's how we get compensated. And then for you guys' case, like I said, is you get compensated by the seller or the developer, essentially, right?
Use the word refinance. So if they renew, there's no compensation. But if you refinance to a different lender,
even if it's the same lender, if the client still stays with the lender, they refinance, yes, then I get compensated. If the client actually renews their mortgage directly with their existing lender, no, we don't get paid. Unless there might be trailer fees, for example. Some lenders offer it, some not. But again, for me, is what is the best option for my client? So ahead of time, I do contact them. I do annual mortgage reviews. So it's like, okay, your mortgage was done last year. Where are you at? We do an evaluation of their home. Just give them a property valuation report. And then just let them know. It's like, okay, so do you need anything? Do you want to make a lump sum payment, for example, or that's kind of something that we do on an annual basis. And then for the renewal, when it comes, it's like we strategize. It's like, hey, what are we doing? And there's times that I just say, you know what, the best option is for you to stay with your existing lender. For me, it's really about the relationship. It's not about a transaction. And I have never focused my business on that. It's really helping people. And there's times that my clients call me. It's like, I was talking to a client a couple of days ago. He's like, You're from Mexico, right? And I'm like, yes, I was originally born in Mexico. And he goes, there's this song that is from Spain. And for the life of me, I can't find it. I've been trying to look at Shazam and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, you know what? Just send me over the the clip of it or the words, whatever, and I'll try to find it for you, right? Do you know what I mean? So it's not about mortgages. It's not about that. If I can help them or connect them with somebody else, or they're like, hey, I need somebody for my insurance, or I need this, or whatever it is, like I will help them. And that's really what it is. I really care about the relationship and the client. Yeah. And the rest comes. Yeah. So when you ask me, well, should it be real estate realtor or should I be a broker? You know what? Just follow your passion. The money will follow. But especially now, I think people are evaluating more of their lives than what they're doing. Life is too short. Just do something you're really passionate about and you enjoy, and the rest will follow.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I really
That's great advice.
think of.
Yeah. A lot of us we're self-employed.
Yes.
And as you know, business owners, entrepreneurs, it's really hard to prove our income.
Yes.
And also convince someone who wants to, where we want to borrow our money, that we have stable income coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you, let's just say I want to get finance for a house.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of advice would you give me in terms of like, what would be the best like mortgage package for a self-employed person like myself? But also, how can I package my taxes and my receipts and my documents so that I'm in the best position to borrow at my optimum?
A lot of it is about strategy. And I mean, whether you're self-employed or you're not, is really all about a strategy. When you're self-employed, there's two ways you can qualify. One of them is called income qualified. So it's pretty well where you're declaring in your line, I guess now it's 15,000 or 1,500. Used to be 150. So that's what you're declaring in your last 2 years of your taxes. And then as long as the most recent year is higher, you can use the 2-year average. If the most recent year is lower, then you have to use that as your income.
Okay.
The other one is when you're self-employed, you can say, okay, well, listen, you know what? I earn 100,000, but with all my business expenses and everything, then I do, I declare 60,000, right? So then you're actually using 60,000. So again, it's different strategies. Sometimes people focus so much on the rate, but it's like, it's not about the rate. It's about the best mortgage with the best rate and the best terms. But this is the thing. When you're self-employed, either you pay a lot of taxes or you maybe pay less taxes and then you just pay a little bit higher rate.
Of course, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, it's like, which one do you want? You can't have a cake and eat it too. Right. So you have to kind of pick. However, if you're incorporated, lenders like to see 2 consecutive years. So if you're T4ing yourself, then they want the 2 T4ing yourselves, or you want to do, if you pay yourself dividends, then you have to have consistent 2-year dividends, right? So again, it's about staying consistent. Don't switch in 1 year to the other and everything else. So I would say if you have plans, then perhaps in the next 2 years or 3 years, you're looking at buying, talk to an expert, a mortgage expert, mortgage broker, and start talking to them to start strategizing and planning for ahead of time.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't, you don't. I mean, we'll find other ways to do it. Yeah. This is when you go to kind of like the A side lenders. That would be more like the banks, the credit unions, mono lenders that only work with brokers. So if you don't work with a broker, you don't have access to them. Then we do have some prime or the B lenders, where in that case, they will actually look at your bank statements for the last 6 to 12 months and seeing how much revenue is coming in. And then based on that, it's called also a stated income program. However, they will deduct whatever expenses you have. And then based on your bank statements, they will actually determine what would be your income.
I see.
In that rate, the rates are a little bit higher. There are lender fees on that. However, this is another great way that you're able to get into a home. A few years ago, I had a client that he just started his business. So he had, because again, regular lenders ask you for 2 years of business for self. He didn't have the full 2 years. So we used his bank statements for the year. He got into the home, and then is usually a 1 or 2 year term. And then after that term, we'll actually move him over to the A side. But he was able to get into the home. By then the prices have gone up and everything else. And he goes, if I hadn't gone into the market at that point, it would have been very, very hard for me to be there at this point.
So it sounds like we need to really align ourselves with some really good lawyers and accountants at the beginning to kind of set up our kind of taxation planning.
Yes. And again, with a broker as well, because again, it's really about having, and this is also with investors, right? It's really having your right team, but they specialize in what they do, right? So
and they all have to talk to each other too.
Yeah, I mean, through the client, right? But yes, they all have to kind of talk the same, because the accountants are going to focus also as like, okay, what is the less taxes you have to pay? But again, it's strategizing. And I'm not saying don't pay the taxes or pay less taxes or declare less income. But again, it's strategizing. Like I have another client, he's looking at buying another property. And then he's like, well, I need to know what income I'm going to need. So we're actually looking at now his income before the end of the year. So he'll be ready for next year. Right. So again, it's really about strategies and planning. I mean, not everybody's the same. Every situation's different. So again, it's what is the best option for each client, and then we do a strategy based on what their goals are and what they're wanting to achieve, right?
So moving from there, we're talking about leveraging.
Yes.
Of real estate, building this real estate portfolio is probably one of the best ways to build up your net worth. And the equity that you let's just say you purchase property A and it's built up in value and you withdraw equity out of it. Is that, and you're withdrawing money out of it, is that interest free or is that tax deductible? Did you know?
The money that you withdraw would be tax deductible if you use it for investments, whether you're buying it to buy an investment property or whether you're buying it to buy like stocks and mutual funds and stuff. There is still tax deductible. There's different strategies for it. There's the Smith maneuver, which is called that you can actually use a line of credit to pull that money out, invested into stocks and investments, and then the dividends actually pay for the line of credit. Okay, so that's the Smith maneuver. But I always recommend my clients to actually have a diversified portfolio. Don't have everything in real estate, but don't have everything in stocks. So have a combination of both. So that's really one of the things I suggest. And when you're talking about self-employed people, it might be. I always, because I have seen it so many times, I always recommend clients to actually have their business banking in one institution and their personal in the other way. Oh, okay. Just because things happen, life happens. And I have seen it where a bank will actually freeze all their accounts. Both personal and business. Because unfortunately, sometimes things do happen. So it's always better to have relationships in two different financial institutions, one personal and one
Interesting.
for
I've
their
never
business.
had anyone recommend that. Or mention that.
So like I said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Even though a lot of people like to. I said, well, because I save on banking fees. It's like, really? Like the banking fees are the least thing that you should worry about.
A couple of dollars here and there.
Exactly. It's really like, so for myself, that's what I have done. And I recommend that again to my clients, especially when they're self-employed. You know what? Just have it in different institutions. So not have all your eggs in one basket.
I don't do that at the moment. I have everything under one financial institution for the sake of ease of not having to visit, different banks and just dealing with one specific location. So it's easier for me. And I don't know, I guess just when I'm filling out application forms, it's like so much easier to locate all my account numbers under one.
And that's why a lot of people do it, because they're like, oh, it's so much easier having everything together, right? Yeah. But again, because I have seen it in the past with different clients, I'm like, yeah, it's probably, again, it's just a suggestion. But yeah, so it's better to not have all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. So as a real estate agent, one of the best partners to have doing business with you is not just the inspector, not just the notary and the lawyer, but a mortgage broker by your side. Yeah. And I'm always wondering, during the time of the accepted offer to subject removal, sometimes someone can get it done in 3 days. Sometimes it can get done in five days. Yes. Sometimes I'm scratching my head. Why is the mortgage broker saying it's going to take 9 days? Yeah. So I want to understand what happens behind the scenes, because we're antsy. Of course. You're probably getting a lot of calls from the realtor saying, "Hey, have you heard what is the underwriter, saying?" So tell us about what's working behind the scenes, and who's working alongside you to get this deal done.
Sure. So the way I see it always with it's really, we're a team, right? Because ultimately the goal is to make it happen for the client. One of the things that happens too is because some lenders, we have so many lenders that we can work with, and it's finding the best option for the client. Some of them might do a pre-approval, but some of them work a lot faster. And it all depends on how the market is. right? Because sometimes the market has been so busy that it actually takes a little bit longer. Because again, they're not just issuing commitment letter, they have to actually review all the documents as well, even though we already did. And that's one of the things that I actually tell my clients is I like to have all the documents at front. One, because then we don't have surprises. Sometimes a client says, this is how much I earned. You look at the application. However, then you get the job letter and it's a little bit different. So then we have to make tweaks on that. And it's like, we have to be prepared for it. There's nothing wrong with it, but we need to want prepared so there's no surprises. And also it's a lot easier. What we do is I do have an underwriter, part of my team, and I do have an assistant and an investment strategist. So I have a big team behind me. The face, so they still deal with me. However, they do have, I have a team behind me. And pretty well, so when we submit the deal, we're pretty well submitting, like when we submit the file to the lender, we're pretty well submitting all the documents at that point.
Okay.
So we know ahead of time. Pretty well right now too, we also know that lenders are asking for appraisals if they're putting more than 20% down payment and it doesn't pass their, property valuation system.
Okay.
So in that case, we do have to. So again, that's why I like to talk to realtors and give them a heads up. And I don't get tons of calls from realtors because I actually keep them posted. And I'm like, okay, this is where we're at. When I get a commitment letter, it's like, okay, I'm meeting the clients. We're sending a commitment letter.
Yeah.
Just keeping them posted of what's actually happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we do. But sometimes, with timing or something happens and then it has happened that it's like, you send it to the lender and for some reason, even though you did all the work and all the due diligence, and then the lender declines it.
Yeah.
And this happens sometimes with properties. And that's why putting subject free offer sometimes is very challenging, especially with stratas, because there might be something if they're putting less than 20% by law, the mortgage has to be insured by a mortgage default insurance, by a insurer. So you have 3 insurers. So you have, CMHC, which is Canadian Housing and Mortgage Corporation, which is by the government. Then you have Sagen, which used to be Genworth, and then you have Canada Guarantee. So if one lender declines it because of the insurer, they won't send it anywhere else. So then it means like you actually have to go and see if the other insurers will actually approve it. So then that means you might have to send it to another lender if the one lender didn't approve it, right? So again, sometimes, as much as you do is they might approve the clients, but they might not approve the property.
Right.
So there's different factors. And the main 3 things lenders look at is income, down payment, and property.
Okay. So
those are the 3 main things that I need to make sure that they're totally signed off before a client removes subjects. And one of the things that I do is I never tell clients to remove subjects because there might be something I don't know about. And then that's a liability for me.
Right.
So I say, okay, financing is in place. This is what is missing. Provided you can fulfill these conditions, then we can you decide if we move forward or not. Right.
I'm not surprised if they say one thing to you and then when it comes to actually, and they fill in something on the application form, but then what comes back, like their credit history, or it's quite different from the story that they're telling you. Does that happen quite often?
And it happens, it's not that they're not telling you everything, but what actually happens sometimes they're not aware of it. Right. And so again, that's why I do a lot of legwork ahead of time. So when I give a client a calculation of what they're actually pre-qualified, because a lot of people, and you're seeing ads on TV, is like, oh, get pre-approved in 2 minutes. It's like, there's not such thing, 2 minutes. Pretty well, you're entering a whole bunch of stuff. They're not checking your credit. They're not doing anything. And that's what a lot of brokers do is they actually sit down, review documents, check your credit, do everything. So you do have a full analysis. Yesterday I had a client, they had gone to a credit union and they had qualified them for the same amount. And then he came to me, he goes, I want to see what I can qualify. I know you have better options and stuff. And then he ended up sending me the email that he got from the credit union. For the life of me, I could not figure out how he came up with the numbers. And this is to a client. And I'm like, my underwriter and I are going through it together and figuring out, I was like, how are they doing these numbers? This should be actually deducted instead of being added and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, again, this is what we do for a living. And we couldn't even figure it out. So I said to the client, you know what, go and see what they're actually doing because One, you're actually looking at selling your condo and buying a townhome.
Right.
And based on what they're doing, I can't qualify you for that.
Right.
But I want to make sure if that's the best option they can do, then please go back to the credit union. Because again, it's a relationship with them. But I want to make sure that they're actually, whatever they're saying to you, they're going to be able to do. Because the last thing I would want you to do is be in a difficult situation, because he has 3 kids too, that, it's like he sells his condo and then he can't buy anything.
Right. Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's an uncomfortable conversation.
Yes.
What makes you talked about you have a team behind you. So how many do you have? Can you repeat that?
Sure. So I have an underwriter who works with me. So she deals directly with the lenders.
Okay.
And she will get documents and everything else from the client.
Do they need to have a certificate? Or
they have to be licensed. I mean, you could have, they have to be licensed. And that's because technically if you're not licensed, you can't talk to a client about mortgage options.
Okay.
Or you can't talk to a lender.
So they need a mortgage broker license.
Correct.
Okay. And the underwriter is basically just someone who's like inputting everything and just kind of checking out the numbers before it goes to the lender.
Correct. And then they submit it and they deal directly with the lender.
Gotcha. I've always thought the underwriter, I misunderstood. I've always thought the underwriter works for the lender and that's who your direct contact is.
Well, there's technically 2 underwriters. So I have my own underwriter and then yes, the lenders have their own underwriter.
Okay. Got it.
So yes, so we do have that.
Okay.
So yes, you're still also dealing with the underwriter from the lender side.
Right. Okay.
So I have that. I have an investment strategist and again, she works with investors and we look at the cash flow. There's a lot of clients that they want to do certain projects or they want to buy a property, but they don't have enough cash. So we will actually match them up with investors to be able to achieve their goals. So we do that. And she looks at the properties, analyzes them, looks at the cash flow. And then we work together on that side where I will actually look at the financing side and she will look at the properties to make sure it's the right fit, especially the right fit for the client. So we work with quite a few realtors on that. And then I have pretty well another 2 assistants. So one that actually does a lot more the office administration work and everything else. And then I have the marketing kind of side as well.
Yeah. So you built this all up over time, obviously. And so one of the biggest things is, at what point do you start expanding? We have this benchmark of like 20 deals. Once we have 20 deals, we should hire an assistant.
Yes.
So when do you end up adding an underwriter? When do you end up adding an assistant to your team?
Pretty well, they usually say, I guess, is depending when you're doing certain volume of business of mortgages or certain deals that you're doing. It like I said, because we're more document heavy, there's a lot of documents. I can do everything, but again, for me, it's really where I'm passionate about is really strategizing and figuring out the options with the client and talking to the client. I said, okay, so what are we going to do here? And that kind of stuff. So again, even though I have a whole team, I am still the face of the company and they're still dealing with me. So again, it just depends on the volume. Yeah, probably about, I guess 20 deals wouldn't be that much actually. It is quite a bit. Like for example, on the realtor side, it is quite a bit. But again, because we're doing refinances and everything else, it just depends.
Yeah.
So I would say probably about 40 files.
40 files. Okay.
40 files would be probably where you would start looking at it and stuff. And again, it's just where you're allocating your time. And for any entrepreneur, whether you're a plumber or you're doing different things, is when you look at your business and if you're actually finding that you're actually doing administrative tasks that somebody else can be doing, you're actually losing money. Right? Because
it's not income generated.
It's not income. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like there's a lot of things like administrative stuff that it's just, it doesn't make sense for me to sit down and do it.
Right.
Because I can do the bigger picture and work with clients and make phone calls and do those kind of things that, sitting and doing some administrative work.
Oh, yes. This topic has come up many times in our episodes.
So,
tell us about your involvement with Haven.
Yes.
Number one, what does Haven stand for?
Yes.
And why are you so passionate about just being a part of the program and and tell us what you do with them.
Sure. So Haven is the Home Builders Association for Vancouver. So because I've been in construction my whole career, when I used to work for developers, they're members of Haven. And then when I started my own business a few years later, I actually did join. And I'm just passionate because, again, one is about knowledge of the construction industry. And they have different committees and different networking events and stuff. So I actually joined the association. And now I've been the chair of the Supplier Council probably for, 3-4 years. And then I'm also on the board of directors. And the reason why I'm passionate is because it's really about helping the construction industry. And there's so many we have so many labor shortages right now in any sector, which is a big problem. Also, like permits are taking so much longer to be getting permits. The supply chains right now are so one of the big things that Haven focuses also is in government relations and advocacy, and also educating consumers, right? Especially when you're looking at buying and renovating. And that's one of the things too that I do is I do residential mortgages, but I also do commercial.
I see.
And I do business loans. There's a lot of people like brokers that just focus on residential or just focus on commercial. But even when you do a construction loan, it's very, very different than just a residential mortgage. So it has to be put together differently.
Yeah.
So it's important that, again, who you deal with has the experience on that area. Because again, if you're an investor and you're looking at building your investment portfolio, you have to, it makes sense to work with somebody that actually specializes in that, right? So, so those are the kind of things. So again, I've just been part of Haven and again, because my whole career has been real estate, it just seemed kind of...
It fits right in?
It fits in, yes.
Yeah. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour, but I wanted to ask some final 5 questions. It's called our five rapid fire question section.
Sure.
And so let's get started here.
Okay.
What's your family's most unique or favorite tradition over the holidays?
It's really about spending time together. COVID has made it a little bit more challenging. But one of the biggest things is now it's more my nucleus family, like my husband, the girls, and because my husband was married before, so I am a bonus mom. And it's really about spending it together and quality time doing crafts or doing activities together, or playing board games, right? So it's really about really sharing time together and spending quality time. Is not it's not about the gifts. It's really about, and that's actually something really cool with the girls. They have actually started doing is doing stuff that it's more of us spending time together. So for example, last year, Soleil for Christmas, she actually did a gingerbread. She's a baker. So she actually did a gingerbread house. And as her Christmas gift, we got to decorate it as a family. So that's really cool. Sweet. And then for my birthday, we actually did a vision board. So each of us are going to do, like we did our kind of vision board of what we want to, what we would like, So, and then for my husband, Father's Day gift, she's actually she hasn't done it yet. She had to get all the equipment, but she's actually doing chocolates with him. And they're going to be doing like actual chocolates and stuff. So again, it is those kind of things. It's really about quality time. It's not about the gifts or everything. And my husband knows that it's like, if you don't give me a card, don't bother with a gift, because I don't care about the gift. It's about the card.
Oh, he wants a handwritten note.
Yeah, I want a card. Yeah. Like to me, those are really what fills my heart.
Yeah.
It's more the words and the card than give me a gift.
It's a lost art.
Yeah. One thing that, and I might segue on this, but one thing that I haven't talked about, but I'm very passionate about is financial literacy. And I do go to high schools. Obviously, with COVID, I haven't been able to do it, but I actually go to high schools and teach financial literacy to kids.
Oh, wow.
And that is that was one of my passions, because there's just lack of education. They're getting there, the schools, but there's a lack of education on financial literacy.
Absolutely. I never learned any of that planning, financial planning in school.
So I talk about credit cards. I talk about the power of compounding interest and all those kind of things. So they get them excited. I talk to them about their careers, not what to do, but what to kind of like, again, like I talked about, follow your heart, follow what your dreams are, what you're passionate about, right? And that's what I also tell the kids. And also about social media, right? Your personal brand is important. You never know what you're going to end up doing in the future.
Yeah.
And once it's out there, you'll never come back.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your favorite investment or real estate book or podcast?
Actually, I would say Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
By Napoleon Hill. So that is a fantastic book. Sorry, not Napoleon Hill. It's by Robert Kiyosaki. And there's actually a game. It's called Cash Flow. And I actually highly recommend it. Robert Kiyosaki actually developed that game. And in order to sell the game, he actually wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he just never knew that it was going to be a first-time seller. And the Cash Flow is a phenomenal game because you actually have a profession and you do the rat race. So pretty well what it is through real estate and investments, you actually are supposed to have your passive income has to surpass your expenses. And then once that happens, you're out of the rat race. And then you get to the second part of the game where you actually have to buy your dream. And our daughter Soleil loves the game. Like we will actually play it, or we'll have friends over and then we'll actually play it. And it's all about real estate and
it's real life.
It's about real life, exactly. And that's why I love it.
Yeah.
And it's a phenomenal game. So that's one thing that I would highly recommend. And it actually teaches about, because you have your expenses, then you might land and you might say, okay, now you have a child. So now your expenses go up, right? And then you have your mortgage and you have student loans, or you have, depending what your profession is, right? So it's actually a phenomenal game. So
fun.
Yeah.
Cash Flow. Okay.
Yeah.
What is one movie you can watch over and over and over again?
Shawshank Redemption.
That's my favorite too.
Really?
It's my favorite. I don't have a TV, but whenever it's on Netflix and it comes up on the roll of recommendations, I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch that again.
Yeah.
I just love that movie.
Yeah. That one and The Lion King.
One last question. Where can our listeners find you?
Sure. So they can find me at financingpros.ca. Okay. And so whatever I can do to help, I'm more than happy to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Appreciate your time and learned so much. And once again, I think what I would love to have you back on, because it's real estate, it's interest rates, there's always so much to learn about this business, to be able to manage debt and build your credit, to see what kind of programs are out there that are available to all the different situations that you see, right? So we'd love to have you back at some point next year.
Yes.
And thanks guys for listening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.